The Indiana basketball coaching search rolls on, and could Buzz Williams from Texas A&M be the answer?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into this, the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Indiana football recruiting is starting to grow. We'll give you a little preview of that later on in the show, in the final the final segment before a big recruiting episode coming up tomorrow. Plus some names to keep an eye on around this Indiana coaching search. Ones that may not be in the hot circle, right? The ones that may not be floating around in the rumor mill, but ones I think you should still know. But we start today's episode with Buzz Williams from Texas A&M, a guy that is very outspoken, very colorful on the sidelines, but also very successful as a head coach. And this has started to gain a little momentum in the last, week, 7-10 days, right? It's a name that is starting to get around. And whether you think there's validity to that or not, well, that's up to you. I'm going to tell you, in terms of what Indiana has said, it's not very much. But that doesn't mean a whole lot, because Indiana hasn't said much about anybody. Brad Stevens is really the only one that we've truly talked about that Indiana was really interested in and has done anything to make that happen, if that makes sense. And so while I still believe that Mick Cronin and Dusty May and Scott Drew are still probably at the top of that list, Buzz Williams starting to gain a little momentum as well. And there's legitimate reason why. This guy has been a really, really good coach at several big-time programs. Virginia Tech, who he did some things with. He had him a top 10 in the AP poll at one point at Virginia Tech, okay? He did the same thing at Marquette, who took them to the Elite Eight all the way back in 2013 and had Marquette playing really, really good basketball. And now he's at Texas A&M, another one of those SEC programs that we've talked about, right? Nate Oates with Alabama, Bruce Pearl with Auburn. Buzz Williams in Texas A&M is kind of the same way. That program in school has more money than they know what to do with, right? Oil money pays big, but basketball was not where the money was going. Buzz Williams steps in and says, yeah, we're going to change that. And look at what they're doing. They're a top 10 team. They are a consistent top 25 team during his time in Texas A&M. Has made the tournament several times. They've made runs in the tournament several times. And there's a good chance they're going to do that again this season. So why would you not consider Buzz Williams? He, in his time, has won he's won over 350 games. He's winning at almost a 63% clip right now as a head coach in college basketball, where he was, remember, A&M, Virginia Tech, Marquette, New Orleans. That's pretty solid for a guy that's been coaching for 18 years. It's a long time, a lot of experience. Kind of reminds you of somebody like a Scott Drew, who's been coaching for a long time. Difference is, Scott Drew's done it for the majority of his time at one place. Buzz Williams likes to hop around a little bit. So Indiana may have a little cold feet because of somebody like Buzz Williams, who is known to jump to a different job, jump to a new place. But Indiana doesn't get bigger than here. You don't leave Indiana to go somewhere else and take a step up in your career. You leave Indiana because it didn't work here, or for whatever reason, you want to go back to your alma mater, or whatever the case may be. But this would be a final destination place for a guy like Buzz Williams. Now, he's got major ties in the state of Texas. He has coached there and has people there, and I think that could be some concern. But when a job like IU comes calling, most people put all that to the side and they make the decision based off of if it's right for them. Buzz Williams fits into that category, though, of coaches that I talked about a while back in this coaching search, where he's very out there, right? He is a very out there emotional coach, but his players love him. just watch Texas A&M basketball. Watch what he did at Tech. Watch what he did at Marquette. Yeah, he's going to say some things that a lot of people don't agree with, and he's going to get fired up on the court, right? Wearing his full suit and glasses. But his players absolutely love him, and so do his fans. His fans support him tremendously because they know he's given it everything he's got. And I've seen Buzz Williams personally coach circles around some of the best coaches in college basketball and doing it at Texas A&M, where he's getting recruits to come there and play in Aggie land and not step on the football field. That's pretty impressive if you ask me. So I think he could bring that type of energy, that type of passion back to Indiana. I really do think it would make sense for Buzz Williams to be considered for this job. And you talk about somebody that can recruit and get players to stay home at IU, stay home in this state, and come play for a guy that will fight for you. He's that true definition of a player's coach. They love him. They absolutely love him. And that's why he gets the most out of every team he coaches, including Texas A&M and including this season where he's got yet another top 10 team who I think will make a run in the NCAA tournament. So some people cringe when you say the name Buzz Williams in Indiana, like, ooh, no, there's no way. No way that'll happen. I'm just saying, I'm just laying it all out there for you and giving you a chance to think about it, giving Indiana a chance to think about it. Would he be the very first call? No, probably not. But I think he should be on the list. And I think people are crazy for thinking it's a bad idea. You may not think it's the best idea, but to just simply say, oh, Buzz Williams, terrible. He's only made it to the Elite Eight. He's not a good coach. He likes to hop around. He's too noisy for me. He doesn't fit Indiana. Give me a break. Come on. The guy can win, and he does win. And I just think he would bring that energy back to IU. That's really where I'm going with this. Do I think he gets the job at the end of the day? No, I don't. But I think he should be considered. And if Indiana gets turned down for whatever reason by a couple of other names, you very well could see Buzz Williams back at the top of that list. Or I guess see Buzz Williams at the top of that list for Indiana to replace as their next head coach moving forward for 2025 and beyond. All right, coming up here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast, while we're talking a lot about these big names, a couple of other names that you need to keep an eye on that could be in the fold if things really go bad for IU, but maybe wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. We have that for you coming up next right here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Roy. Attention, Locked On Hoosiers fans. The future of college sports is here, and it's transparent. Before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happen under the table, and fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes that they love. Now with Roy, you get to be a part of the change and support Indiana athletes in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to choose the player you want, decide how much to contribute, and receive exclusive content from the athletes that you back. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. It's risk-free. It's a risk-free way to show your support. The Roy app is giving fans the control. No more uncertainty. Now you can provide transparent, impactful support and help shape the team and the future of college sports with your contributions. Download the Roy app today on the App Store and start backing Indiana athletes the way that they deserve, with transparency, trust, and a real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers, your daily spot for all things Indiana athletics. Appreciate you making that so. And if you are, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on audio, thank you so much for being here. Really, really do appreciate it. And what is a fun time, right? I know it's weird with the football off season and basketball still trying to find itself and a coaching search as well. I mean, there's a lot happening around IU, and we're glad that you're here, and I'm glad that I can bring it to you every single day. For those of you listening on audio, very quickly here, have those notifications turned on. Be sure that you are following us if you can, leaving us those 5-star reviews. All of that stuff helps us. I'm telling you. You may not think it does. You may think it's a waste of time, but I'm telling you it's not. It helps us out tremendously. So thank you so much for doing that. Same thing goes for my YouTube audience. You know who you are, you know what to do. Like the video, tap that thumbs up. It's easy, gets it out there, lets more people find it on the YouTube algorithm. Also, leave your thoughts down below. Buzz Williams, yes or no? Why or why not? What your thoughts on him? This is the first time we've really had a conversation about him. So I want to see what you have to say, and then subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you haven't already, I need you to do that. We are so close to 4,700 subscribers. So if you could help us get there, I would really, really appreciate that. And I think we can do it possibly today. So thank you so much for that. So we keep talking about a lot of these big names, right? The Mick Cronins and the Bruce Pearls and the Nate Oates of the world and Buzz Williams, of course. And while I'm putting all of that out there for you, there are names that we need to talk about and at least think about if IU gets to this point. And I want to preface this by saying I don't think any of these guys would end up getting the job because I think they're too far down the list. But they could be a possible future consideration if things go bad with whoever this next hire is, or if things go bad with this current coaching search. I mean, we've talked a lot about how, and I believe this, I really do, but I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second here. We've talked about how I believe that Indiana is still a top tier job. I still think it's one of the best in college basketball because of the program, because of the NIL, and the recruiting, the players that are here in this state. I believe that all those things are true. But what if, which is my favorite game, what if Indiana starts calling? What if they pick up the phone and say, hey, this is Scott Dolson at IU. We want you to come and be our next head coach. And Coach A says, nah, I'm good. I like where I'm at. Or how about somebody in the NBA who's in an executive role? Yeah, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Nah, I think I'm okay. I appreciate you calling, though. Click. All right, type in the next phone number. Hey, this is IU. We'd love you to come be our head coach. You know, I really appreciate it. And while that'd be great, I've kind of got ties where I am. Think I'm going to stay put. Oh, okay. Type in another number. See where I'm going here. What happens if Indiana starts getting turned down by a lot of these big names? Because Indiana's not going to call some assistant coach out in South Dakota and offer him this job. That's not going to happen. We're calling the biggest of the big, the best of the best. And we're shooting in hopes of making. But what if we don't? That's where names like these guys come in that I think we need to at least have in the back of our minds, okay? Have in the back of our minds just in case it doesn't go well. And this is a name that I've mentioned a couple of times that I continue to see you Locked On Hoosiers fans talk about, and it's Ben McCollum, right? The head coach at Drake, a guy who is in his first year at Drake. We've had a little bit of a conversation about him, who is just killing it at Drake right now. He is crushing the game as the head coach at Drake. Overall, okay, he's been coaching for over 15 years, and he won at an 80% clip at the D2 level. Listen to some of these accolades here. Won 4 Division II national titles, had a chance at another one, and did that at Northwest Missouri State. Just got his first big-time gig as the head coach at Drake, and he's absolutely crushing it. Is that resume good enough to come to Indiana? I don't know. I worry about it. I do. I think he's going to be a really good coach, and he'll probably get a big-time job somewhere at some point. But taking a risk on him right now for where this Indiana basketball program is, I just don't know if that trigger would be pulled, right? I just don't know if they would make that sort of a decision. Not saying they won't. I'm just saying I don't think they will, because you got to see more. You've got to see more. Drake is good. They've got some talent, but can they sustain it? And then when he does get to a job like this, whether it's Indiana or somewhere else, can he make it? Can he do it? Can he compete with all the great coaches in college basketball? That's going to be the question for a guy like Ben McCollum. So I just don't have confidence that Indiana would make him their first decision. But if you start getting turned down, it may not be a bad idea, because here's the positive side to a hire like Ben McCollum. If it works, if you hit, right, if this ends up working and you get a coach for the next, what, 20, 25 years, you look like a freaking genius. You look like the greatest hire ever if you bring in Ben McCollum and it works. But it's a major risk. It's a major gamble until he proves he can do it at a high enough level. So keep Ben McCollum in mind. I've mentioned a couple of names in the past that I just don't think. Northwestern, Vanderbilt, don't waste your time there. I don't think there's anything. I did see a name that came up the other day that I have not thought about in quite some time. I may have mentioned it on the show. I can't remember, but one that if it just went to absolute hell and you had to just make a call and get a proven coach because things were really, really bad, I saw Will Wade's name come up the other day. And my goodness, talk about a situation that would get pretty dicey here at Bloomington. You're talking about a guy in Will Wade who's at McNeese State right now, who was one of the best young coaches in college basketball before he got himself in a heap of trouble. And now he is on his way back up. He's a guy that has continued to win games. And I know his past is not good. It's not good at all, which I think would prevent IU from even making that phone call, which is why I think there are some on the massive list that Indiana's not going to go after because of that. Whether you agree with that or not, whether you think that's good or not, that's up to you. But Will Wade's name came through and I was like, wait a minute. Will Wade. And I mean, if it came down to it and you were in that big of a pickle, then sure, I guess make the call. But I don't see it happening. I really, really don't. I mean, Indiana might just go call that assistant coach of South Dakota before they made Will Wade the head coach at Indiana, and especially the things that he got in trouble for, right? I mean, anybody getting in trouble as a head coach is not good, whether it is recruiting or personal or whatever the case may be, right? It's always a gamble and a risk at that point, which is why, again, I think there are some names on this list that Indiana won't touch because of those reasons, no matter how good of a coach they are. I think Will Wade is probably in that category too, but just keep it in mind, just in case, keep him in, keep him in the back of your mind too. But McCollum, Indiana, I'm telling you this right now, Indiana would go and get McCollum from Drake before they would give Will Wade from McNeese a chance. I firmly believe that. They would rather hire the up-and-comer who's got a clean slate than the proven head coach whose slate is pretty filthy. So that's kind of where that stands. But keep those names in mind, just in case, because I think we do have to be prepared if some of these big-time names turn us down. Better have a backup plan. Better have a plan F, plan E, right? If you're Indiana, because we think we're a great place. We think we're a great job, and I believe that. But what if some of these coaches don't agree? What if they say, nah, I'm okay. I'm going to stay where I am. Or what if they take a different job? You better have several names in the chamber ready to go if you're Indiana. All right, coming up here on the final segment on Locked On Hoosiers, we're going to do a little preview of Indiana football recruiting because some big names are starting to talk and get Indiana in the mix, whether they already visited for Junior Day or they're coming up for some visits over the summer or just putting Indiana on their list. We'll talk about some of those names and what's coming up tomorrow as well here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. Final segment on Locked On Hoosiers. Again, thank you so much for being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. And quick segment here on some names you need to know for Indiana football recruiting for Kurt Signetti and the boys on that side of things. And tomorrow we're going to have Brian Smith, a recruiting expert from Locked On, the IU grad's going to join us as he has several times here in 2025. And we're going to get him, and late 24. He was with us during the portal stuff too. But he's going to join us for tomorrow's show for a couple of segments and really dive into some of these big names for Indiana that are talking about Indiana, hyping up Indiana, visiting Indiana. I mean, I have not seen a recruiting buzz like this at this time of year in quite some time here. It really is fascinating to see the growth of Indiana recruiting on the football side and the plain interest, the flat out interest in Indiana. It's like it really is. And Brian and I have talked about this where when guys start to visit and they start to put Indiana in their graphics and you start to see that trend growing a little bit, other players take notice. They look around and they're saying, "Man, what the heck is going on in Bloomington? Why is that kid going there? Why are you visiting Indiana? Like what's happening?" They are curious. They want to know. They want to see it for themselves. And Indiana says, "Come on in. We'll take anybody and everybody. We have to keep growing." Indiana's not at the spot yet to be selective in terms of who comes on campus, but we are able to be a little selective on who we want on our roster. And I'm telling you, man, there's some big time names that are deciding and at least putting Indiana out there. The Cameron McHaney, did you see this one? A really, really high rated defensive line who's going to be making an official visit to IU coming up later. That's a huge deal for Indiana. You're talking defensive line. You're talking offensive line, right? We've got athletes who are coming. The one that I wanted to mention, where'd he go? I lost him on my list. Where'd he go? Where'd he go? There it is. Trevor Gibbs, the in-state receiver or athlete receiver for the state of Indiana, is coming to make an official visit at Indiana. Guys that we'll talk about tomorrow with Brian Smith, guys that he has covered at the high school level. You're getting in-state kids. And I know, again, I understand. Indiana for high school football recruiting is not up there in the rankings, but it's still legit. And you got to win the battles at home before you can go abroad. And that's exactly what Indiana's doing. I love Trevor Gibbs. Love this kid. And if Indiana can find a way to land him, that makes shockwaves. That sends a message through the state and even the surrounding states too, because we've talked about how IU's going up to Wisconsin to look at that offensive lineman. We're going to Illinois for receivers. We're going to Ohio for big boys. We're going to Michigan. We don't care. We flat out don't care. We're going to get our kids from home, but we're going to start going in surrounding areas too. And I think those are a couple of names that you should keep an eye on. Jaden Williams is the Ohio kid I'm talking about, who was here for junior day. Okay, here for junior day and has said nothing but great things about IU since then. We're not worried about it, man. Indiana recruiting is in a good spot. And I'm excited to have Brian Smith join us tomorrow to dive deeper into those names and more for Indiana football recruiting for 2025. Heck, even 2026, for 2026, even 2027 and beyond for Indiana football recruiting and head coach Kurt Cignetti. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you so much again for being here. I can't stress that enough, how much it means for you to be here, making this your go-to spot, whether you listen, whether you're watching, help us out, right? Have those notifications turned on, follow us, subscribe to the channel, like these videos on YouTube, leave your comments down below, plus interact with our stuff on YouTube. We post reels, we post, shorts is what they're called. We post polls on YouTube, right? We put stuff on our social media page on Locked On Hoosiers on X. So be sure you've got all that going and you've got all that in your rotation because we want you to be a part of this wonderful community here at Locked On Hoosiers. We are back tomorrow. Okay, Brian Smith joins us, Locked On recruiting expert, and our Indiana Purdue preview. Yeah, it's been weird. No midweek game, but we got one coming up on Sunday for Indiana men's basketball. We'll have that for you on the show tomorrow as well. So until then, till next time, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.